Good morning. Thank you guys for coming in and joining us for coffee chat this morning. I hope that all of you, it's blurred out. Hope all of you have brought your coffee. Let us know in the chat what kind of coffee you're drinking or what kind of coffee you wish you were drinking. My name is Kate Wallace. I am the association manager for Cal Sega, and this is Coffee Chat. Thank you to those of you who have attended many coffee chats. And for those of you who this is your first coffee chat, welcome. This morning, we're going to have a panel discussion about recruiting. I know this is something that is going to be valuable to you because I've talked to so many of you who this is a huge challenge for. So I know that you're going to enjoy the discussion this morning. And in a minute, I'll turn it over to Ashley Cervantes, who is she's the vice president for Cal Sega. She was newly elected last year, but also she is the chair of the ambassador committee, and the ambassador committee is the committee that puts this on. Before I turn it over to her, though, I just wanted to quickly give a plug for Security University, which we have coming up May 16th and 17th in Sacramento. That event is our 2-day management training program. We have sessions on human resources. So Ann Laguza, who's with us this morning on our panel, she will be speaking at Security University. So human resources, legal, insurance, BSIS compliance. We have a session about financial management and responsibility. So yes, this is a great program for those new to the security industry, but as we all know, the laws and the policies continue to change. And so this is also a really good refresher to those of you who may have been in the security industry for a long time, or maybe who have newly moved into a leadership position. So in the chat, I'll drop the registration link for Security University. Please plan to register for that. We're more than halfway full. It's definitely going to sell out. So if you want to attend that, please plan to register. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ashley.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction, Kate. I am so excited to be here. I told myself I was going to figure out what number coffee chat this was this time, and I forgot to do so. So if you happen to know how many coffee chats this is, I would love to know as well. It has been such an exciting year and a half. All the time seems to blend together since COVID. But one of the things as an ambassador committee that we aim to do is to help retain all of our Cal Sega members by adding value. And so that is our hope today. And with every coffee chat, this is such an important topic. As Kate mentioned, so many of you are talking about recruitment, your recruitment woes since COVID. I know it has been a challenging season on the recruitment front. And so we have a fantastic panel that we have put together for all of you. And I am so excited to introduce them in just a moment. But first, Kate, can I ask you to launch the poll for us? We do have some poll questions. The purpose of asking these poll questions first is so that our panelists can get to know a little bit about what category each of you fit into. So while you answer those poll questions, I'm going to go over them. The first question is, who's on today? So we want to know kind of what bucket or category do you fit into? Are you a member of HR or operations who spends 80% or more of your time on recruitment? Or are you a member of HR operations who spends 50% or more? Option C is, do you only spend 25% or more? And notice that or more is very intentional because we understand in the security industry that this can change from day to day, right? If ideally you're only spending 25% of your time in recruitment, that or more is there for the off days where you are now all of a sudden spending 100% of time in recruitment, even though you might be the CFO, right? Or whatever. I understand we all wear many different hats. So go ahead and select that. You can also select if you are an owner or management. We understand what that means as well. Or maybe you're in the final bucket. What's a recruiter? I don't even know what we're talking about. I just joined because I like coffee. I don't know if any of you fit into that bucket, but zero judgment if you do. Question number 2, what tools do you regularly use to recruit? Check as many as apply there. So we're just really curious so we can kind of frame this conversation today, what you all are already using. And if you do select that F option for other, please let us know in the chat if you're using something different. Final question, question number 3, what do you hope to get out of today's coffee chat? And again, check as many as apply, but this really helps our panelists kind of frame some of their responses around what you're looking for. So we'll give everybody just one more moment to answer those questions while I introduce the panel, and then Kate, if we're able to share those results after I introduce everybody. So today I am very excited to introduce Eric Ojeda of Black Knight Patrol. Eric, we are so thankful for you being here today. Black Knight Patrol is a smaller private security company based out of San Pedro, California. And you all might be familiar with Black Knight because they have a phenomenal social media presence. And Manny Jimenez also sits on the board of directors with me. So thank you so much for being here today. Eric, is there anything you wanted to add or say a quick hello?
Just to say hello and thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Eric. Next up, we have Ann Laguza, who all of you are familiar with the Works Consulting. And one wing of the Works Consulting is recruitment. And I have personally used Ann and Chad for recruitment purposes. They're phenomenal. When you just need to kind of outsource because you're maybe in over your head or there's just so many other things going on, they are a phenomenal team for recruitment. And obviously, Ann has lots of experience working in-house in HR for a large security company before, as well as obviously the work she does with the Works Consulting. And was there anything else you wanted to add to that or just say a quick hello?
Oh, no, that's great. Thank you so much for having me as well. I'm really excited for this conversation. I think it's so timely.
Agreed. Okay, last but not least, I'm going to introduce these two together. We are very fortunate that one of the larger companies, Garda World, has allowed us to steal Marissa and Tanya away for just a little bit. Today, they represent the Northern California Senior Recruitment, Senior, oh my goodness, Senior Regional Recruiters from North California and Southern California, respectively. Marissa and Tanya, is there anything you want to say or add to that or a quick hello?
I just want to say hello to everyone and thank you for having us.
I would like to say hello too. We're really excited to be here and looking forward to this coffee chat.
And that's our panel for today. So we are very excited and we'll go ahead and kick it off. I think we can share those poll results really quickly, kind of call out the top majority responses. So it looks like, as per usual, I understand this is a smaller security operation. Most of our attendees today are owner or top management, is that 57%. So my panelists, you kind of know who you're talking to majority wise. The second question, it looks like we have a lot of folks using Indeed, and then there's a few others that I think popped in the chat or maybe are on their way in the chat. It looks like, ZipRecruiter and Craigslist kind of follow, and then LinkedIn is kind of lagging way behind, which is sort of what I see in my own personal experience on LinkedIn. Not as much recruitment in the security space right now anyways. And then question number 3, it looks like our top response that folks are looking for is practical hiring and recruitment related tips that they could implement starting today. So we do have some questions that will help frame some of that. But the second top response was, how do I develop my skills as a recruiter in this industry? And then of course, help, where do I find people was number 3, which is not surprising. I think many of us find, myself included, I am not the recruiter for our company, but I do oversee that wing, and it is those are the things we're concerned about in that wing. So in that lane rather. All right, so let's go ahead and dive on into our very first question. So I would love to kick off by defining recruitment. So I'd like to hear about how each of you came to your current role in a recruitment capacity, and can you speak to what specific skills you have that you believe make you a solid security industry recruiter? And so we'll kick it off with you, Eric, whenever you are ready.
To define recruitment, pretty broad question, but I would say in my own words, relentlessly and continuously filling roles and providing people with opportunities to work within your organization. I think that would be a good definition of that. The skills that would make me a great recruiter. I actually served 2 years within the Marine Corps as a recruiter. So it taught me a lot of consultative selling, people skills, communication, presenting in front of large crowds, to the point to where I carried on all those skills and I brought them over to security recruitment as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for your service. We appreciate you so much, Eric. All right, Anne. I know you've probably you could take the whole rest of the coffee chat.
No, I'm excited to be here with other people. It's so great. I love that definition, Eric. And I wanted to add that I think that matching the culture of your company to the person that you're hiring is so such an important part of recruiting and part of the definition that I would add. And I think, what I would say makes us a good recruiting team here, or myself a good recruiter. I've been doing this for 32 years, so it's been a very long time. I've seen a lot of ups and downs in the recruiting industry. So you kind of get good at, when there's not very many people and when there's a lot of people, you start to get remember the tactics and strategies that you use to find people. And I think just one of the things when you do this all the time, just like all of us that are specialists in our area, you do this all the time. You see the common things that are definite signs or that people are not going to be good employees, and the signs that they will be. So I think you just that constant experience helps you really identify who will be a good employee or not.
Absolutely. All right, Marissa.
All right, so you both took the words straight out of my mouth. Definitely being able to match a candidate with our positions and the company, I think is what defines recruitment. And in regards to what makes us good recruiters, I think being able to connect with people, knowing what the company needs, and definitely being able to notice who is going to be a good employee for the company is also what makes us, good.
Absolutely. And I just love that we're expanding this definition because I think there's a lot of folks out there, especially if you're an owner or top management where you wear a lot of different hats. I think it's important to really frame this conversation. Tanya, last but absolutely not least.
Yes, I think with the common ground that we are having with all of us today about this question is that, we need to recognize the strengths our candidates have and their weaknesses. So that's, I think, a very important key factor that we have to recognize, so that we could, place them in the right position. I know with my experience, I've recruited in the past. Right now, I do high volume recruiting, but for 15 years, I recruited for a banking branch anywhere from 5 to 8 employees. So it was really important to recognize their strengths and their weaknesses. And, like we all said, if they're going to be placed in the right role. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the really big value add for all of you on today, I know we have kind of a variety of company sizes here, but what's so cool about this conversation is having, the smaller company conversation all the way to one of the largest companies and how their tactics may be similar or even the same. And then we have Anne, who's like in the middle because she works with companies of all sizes and kind of has lots of perspective from her many years in the industry. So I'm really excited. Thank you all for setting us up for this conversation to dive in a little bit deeper. So for the folks listening in today that are looking to build their internal recruitment processes or teams, what's each of your respective recommendations on where to start that process? And let me just tee it up a little bit more for you, Eric, before you run with that. My company we've been in business, it'll be 13 years in August, which I know you're all thinking, no way, she's not old enough for that. Just kidding. But you know, when I got to the point where I realized, you know what, I'm only one person and I'm not going to be able to do the recruitment for this company forever, kind of where I stepped back and I started writing down every single thing that I did to try to transform that into a process. So I'd love to hear, obviously all of you have come from, you know, different, you've come in at different places with regards to walking into an already established kind of recruitment wheel, or recruitment machine. And so I'd love to hear from each of you, like, what is a good place, or what is a critical part of the process, really? When I say what is your respective recommendations on where to start, it might not necessarily be where to start, but what can't be left out. And we're looking for some really practical tips here. All right, now that I teed that up for you, Eric, take it and run, sir.
I've actually recruited for a lot of security organizations here in the Los Angeles County. Some of the things that have helped me the most, and especially coming into Black Knight Patrol, is systematic recruitment. Making sure that as soon as you hit the ground running, and you start creating systems so that later on in the future, you don't hit a wall or get to a point to where you've already exhausted the current applicants that you have, or the current applicants that the previous person has already exhausted. And then you end up with nothing. So just systematic recruiting, creating pipelines, creating different avenues from where your applicants are coming. And not only that, but create new applicants. We don't always have to find those individuals that have been in the security industry for 12, 15, 20 years. If you have a good recruitment / mentorship program, you can create your applicants. So I do presentations for youth programs, military cadet programs, fire programs. I'm all out in the community to make sure that we're consistently building business, not for now, but for in the future as well.
Absolutely. I love that. I'm picturing like a machine when you talk about creating a system. That's kind of where my mind goes with that. Thanks, Eric. What do you got for us, Ann?
So I have to say, I love that both of you were talking about systems and processes. And I wanted to say that it's so important to spend the time up front and then be confident in what you created and stick with it, and don't keep changing it every single time you have a little trouble with it. Of course, you can refine it, and sometimes that's important. But I think sometimes I see people throw away their systems way too fast, and that's what creates confusion, and you don't find great employees. But my real tip is have a meaningful interview, not just a checklist of yes or no questions. You want to work graveyard? Do you have a guard card? Whatever, just checklist questions. Come up with interview questions that are behavioral based and or open-ended. And I'll give a quick example of that. Instead of, have you worked in a high-rise building before? Tell me about a time that you were working in a high-rise building and a challenge that you came across. Tell me about a time that a client asked you to do something that was out of the scope of your understanding of the work you were supposed to be doing. Like, have them reason through some things for you to really make sure they're a right match for your job. Those questions are much harder to answer, and you can easily tell if someone's had the experience or not. And then you'll have more information to decide if training's necessary, or if they have this, or maybe they don't have the skills that you need, or they have the skills that you need.
I love that, Ann. I love it so much. I actually dropped it in the chat. So I'd love to hear from all of you in the chat. Do you have a favorite meaningful interview question, kind of like the example that Ann just gave? And I love it when the conversation is kind of going in two places. So we are going to have the breakout rooms at the end, but I think that we all get so much more out of this. If you all want to interact in the chat, feel free to do that. All right, Marissa, Tanya, one or both of you, kind of what's your respective recommendations on where to start, or that key critical piece with the recruitment process as a whole?
Tanya, you want to take it?
Sure. So I think, asking the right questions. Also, what I usually do is, sometimes I'll kind of sidetrack, and instead of asking questions, I'll have the candidate start talking. And from there, I'll build my questions as I'm talking to them. It actually makes them feel more comfortable. They don't feel nervous as much, versus asking, what are your strengths or weaknesses, or security, interview questions. So what I'll start to do is, tell me about, your past experience. What did you do there? And they'll start talking, and then they'll talk a little more. And then from there, you'll get to, see what they actually did and, in their past, security experience. And then from there, I'll come up with my question. So I think that has been a very positive factor for me as far as developing interview questions, is as I'm going along with the interview, and as the candidate starts talking and feels more comfortable, they'll just kind of segue you to answering those questions.
I love that, Tanya. And in your experience, because I know some people have different philosophies on this. So in your experience, it sounds like you're saying that when they're comfortable, you're going to actually have a more meaningful interview versus if they're
Absolutely.
more nervous. Yeah. Okay. I love
Yeah.
that. I love to
Yeah.
hear that.
I encourage everyone to try that. It really works. It's great. Just, have them, talk about their past experience, and then, they'll talk, they'll start, I don't want to say give out information, but that they're basically giving out their information of what they did, if they had any issues or if they had positive experiences. So you get to hear that. And then, the candidate also feels very comfortable. And that sense of like nervousness kind of diminishes for them. So you have a more effective interview.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like I said, I mean, I've heard different perspectives and philosophies around that, but I think that makes a lot of sense what you're saying. So fantastic. All right. Question number 3. In each of your respective opinions, what is the number one duty of an effective recruiter? The number one job of any person to be an effective recruiter? And Eric, we'll kick it off with you.
I would say the number one job would be follow up. You can have a lot of people. You can talk to so many people, and you can conduct. I remember when I first started recruiting, I would conduct so many interviews because I was so excited and I just wanted to talk to everyone. And then I forgot to follow up. So I was just waiting, and it's a process. It's a system where you have to go ahead and place them somewhere and then get them the job, communicate with them, because people forget. A lot of the times people think that they didn't make it. A lot of times you had a great interview, but in their shoes, they were just too nervous to even know that they got the job. So just follow up, always follow up, and just make sure that you're staying in communication with every applicant.
I love that. And I know when we were on kind of preparing for this call, something that you said, Eric, that really stuck with me is, how, in addition to follow up, how important kind of having that partnership and collaboration within the community is. And I know you kind of spoke a little bit to this a moment ago, and I have more questions where we'll tackle that kind of long-term, that long game, right? Where you're constantly thinking like, who am I going to be able to hire today, but also who am I going to hire a year from now? And so I really love the balance. I don't know, can you speak a little bit more about the importance of that kind of community collaboration and how that fits in with your recruitment strategy?
For Black Knight Patrol, we've always been really involved with the community. So it really comes naturally. Talking to different organizations as I grew through recruitment, and as I went through different jobs, I saw that a lot of the times, a lot of people that are sitting in front of me are personnel that I've seen at events for youth programs. I've noticed that a lot of our best applicants and our best employees have been in some sort of youth program, either with the police, with the fire department, with school organizations, career programs. So I started digging deep into these programs and going out into the community and actually volunteering my time, stepping in during their training sessions, working out with them, having motivational speeches with them, pretty much everything, to the point to where I started noticing that as we grew our social media presence, we always had people contacting us left and right. Hey, I'm at this age now, can I apply? And I would let them know where to apply, how to get ready, what classes to take, how to keep growing in the security industry, to not only just, apply for a guard card, get the guard card, and then expect to already know it. Like, no, start preparing from, as soon as you know about it, to the point to where you apply. And then by the time that you apply and you start working, you're already ahead of the curve.
I love that. And also, sorry, I promised my panelists I would not throw them any curveballs. That was kind of a curveball, Eric. Sorry. You handled it like a champ, though. I know Manny's listening in. I'm sure he's very proud. Okay, and no curveballs for you right now, anyways. So what is the number one duty of an effective recruiter? What do you think?
So I think the thing that comes to mind for me is that you should be setting the example of the qualities that you're looking for. So if you're looking for somebody on time, you should be on time. If you want someone to be organized and prepared, you should be organized and prepared. So really think about how you are representing your company and ensuring that that's in alignment with who you say that you're trying to hire. Just quick story, as I visited one of the HR directors I worked with for a while. They just recently moved and her office is a shambles. I mean, it is such a mess. And I said, please tell me you are not interviewing people in here, because they've been having a hard time getting people from the interview to actual start. And I'm thinking, well, I wouldn't want to work here either. It looks like crap in here, So if this is an indication of how you treat your workspace and your people, maybe that's part of the problem. So just really think about that. And if you need a second opinion, ask someone, a trusted colleague, someone, to come in and, if you want to like a look at your workspace, or like I said, but how you present, whatever, but everything. And Ashley knows this because I say this at the conference all the time, but like your forms, your front office person, like everybody should be representing you 100% from beginning to end, so that you can make sure you're setting the impression you need to make to hire the right people.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think that definitely speaks to all of us, right? If anybody is looking for a tangible piece of advice, like what can I affect today with regards to recruitment, I think that is a walk away pro tip right there. And something obviously all of us can work on. So thank you for that, Anne. All right, Marissa, I know you had a really great little golden nugget when we were prepping for this. So I don't want to step
Yes.
on Tanya's toes. If you have something as well,
All right. Definitely agree with Eric and Ann, but I also think that one of our number one duties as recruiters would be to be able to connect with people. Being a people person, making the candidate comfortable enough that they want to, talk to us about their experiences or what they're looking for, so that we can better match. But also being able to not convince, but make this candidate want to work with us, want to be a part of the team. I think that, being able to connect with a candidate is very important.
Absolutely. And I loved, Marissa, when we were prepping, you talked about, well, technically speaking, the number one job of a recruiter is to fill a post. But then you kind of elaborated, well, how I do that is through connection. And you kind of spoke to being a people person and how critical it is that when you're in that front-facing recruiter role, that you are a people person. So I don't know if you want to expand on that anymore, but I loved that.
Definitely. Because for me, of course, it's very important to fill a spot, but what I mostly think about when I'm with a candidate is that I'm helping this person find a job, put food on the table, pay bills, provide, and so for me, it's that being able to connect with that person is really like my one number one duty that I have to be able to connect.
I love that, Marissa. Tanya, did you want to add to that?
Marissa said it perfectly. You have to be a good communicator. You have to want to do this job. You want to be a recruiter. You want to help people find a job, having that sense of caring, of making sure that, these candidates, find the job that they're looking for. So yeah, great communicator, being a people person, and actually wanting to be a recruiter. I think that's something that not many people want to talk about. When you're a recruiter, you can't just, get this job and okay, I'm going to be a recruiter. No, you want to be a recruiter. You want to make a difference in people's lives.
Absolutely. I mean, on my team, we talk a lot about how it's a two-way street, right? As much as Anne kind of spoke to this as well, but as much as we're interviewing these candidates, they are absolutely interviewing us. And we want to make sure that we don't put on we don't want to put on a fake show, because then that person ultimately isn't going to last. We want them to be able to see truly who we are as a company and what our culture is, to see if they can assess for themselves if they're a good fit or not, because it's better to pass on them at that stage than, you know, a month or a year down the line. Right. We've all learned that lesson the hard way, I'm sure. So I thank you all. That was fantastic. Those little golden nuggets are kind of stacking up for our listeners. So next up, let's talk about the candidate screening process. So right now, the market has been very challenging for many of us to even just get candidates in the door. I certainly remember a time when that was not the case, right? When it was kind of flipped, and as Anne mentioned, there are ebbs and flows and seasons when it comes to recruitment, right? And anybody who's been in this industry for any length of time knows that to be true. So for the folks listening today, what can you recommend about screening out candidates? And one of my favorite Anne quotes is, believe people when they tell you who they are. So kind of teeing that up for you, Eric, and sorry, Anne, I hope that wasn't your thing. If so, I might have just stole your thunder, but it's the best quote. So Eric, what can you recommend about screening out candidates?
I would say it starts the moment that you get that application. I actually get a name, and once I see the name, I start going through the resume. I look to see whether or not they have the skills that I'm looking for. But mainly, I'll look at the city. I look at where they live. We have a computer literally in our hands the entire time, or anywhere. I'll pull up Facebook. I'll pull up Instagram. I'll pull up anything, and I'll just Google the name, look up the name or whatever it is. A lot of the times, people put everything out there. So if you have an individual, instead of, you know, maybe wasting your time and having somebody sit here, you actually just take 2-3 minutes to go through an Instagram, and you find that they probably might not be the best fit for your organization. So that immediately they screen themselves out right there and then. Other things is just looking to see if they like, for example, Indeed has a couple skills questions. I love when they go through and they actually do the skills questions. So that's definitely something that pushes it out there and helps me figure out whether or not they're going to be fit for the job. But I would say just that alone is puts me ahead of not wasting too much time on applicants that wouldn't make it within our organization.
Yeah, I love that. And I know there might be some laws changing around whether or not as recruiters we're allowed to do that. But I think until, you know, that kind of comes down the pipeline. And one of my favorite things Marissa mentioned was, what's one of the things that we don't want to talk about is HR. And I know this is hard when many of us operate in the HR space. So with that, Anne, I'll turn it over to you. What do you recommend about screening out?
I was literally just thinking that this is the weirdest thing for me, because I'm just coming from a recruiter perspective and I'm trying to leave my HR hat off. I'm like, okay, so sticking to recruiting, come to Security University. That was a plug, and you'll get recruiting and HR. You know, I think it's so important in screening, just to really know, again, it's all, to me, so much of this comes down to preparation, but what are you able to train someone on, and what must they come in with, right? So I was working with a client the other day that's decided to make an offer to someone, and we were kind of laughing because this person doesn't have a voicemail set up. And every time, including when I tried to call them to tell them the company was going to make an offer, I couldn't get a hold of her. For some people that would be a deal breaker, but it wasn't for my client. But I did say to her is that is actually trainable. Like, they're going to give her a company phone. They're going to teach her how to set up her voicemail and tell her what their expectations are. So that's trainable. But if you want someone to be good in customer service and they're, you know, not good in customer service during the interview, and like, I think, what Eric said, just from the minute you start interacting with them, it sometimes can be really challenging to teach someone to be a good customer service person. I'm not saying it's impossible, but you need to think about those things. How much time do you have? Who do you have on your team that's going to teach them? You know, is this a position where they're going to have regular interaction with people? And how many bumps are you going to need to go through before you get them trained up, if that's possible? And some people are not meant to be customer facing, right? They'd be much better off in one of your roles that doesn't require them to have regular interactions. So being really clear on that, which skills are trainable, who's going to train them, who has the time to do it, and being able to differentiate that from what do you need them to come to the table with, so that, again, you, of course, you're hiring the right person and screening out the people that you don't want or are not a match.
I love that. And it's a tricky thing, especially in an environment like we have right now where everybody is just scrambling to grab people. But for all the reasons, we still want to be able to have that tool in our back pocket. So thank you, Anne. All right, Marissa, Tanya, one or both of you, who wants to tackle what can you recommend about screening out candidates?
I could go. So I think what's really important is before, you know, having that in-person interview or an actual virtual interview, whatever your company holds their interview, is to phone screen. You know, pick up that phone and call that candidate and have a guide of what you want to ask, what, you know, have a guideline of what your expectations are and go from there. And you know, the purpose of the phone screen is so that you could basically either screen in or screen out the candidate. So I think that's a valuable tool that we use at Gardaworld, and it helps us like hone down the right candidate for, you know, our sites.
Absolutely. And I'm sure at Gardaworld, I mean, the volume you get is probably just huge. So that's
Yes.
really critical. Kind of to Eric's point of like, you know, you have all these different mechanisms, and I think the telephone screening is always like a really solid initial, like just pick up the phone and you know, like Anne was saying, I mean, sometimes you can tell by things just like maybe not necessarily whether they have the voicemail set up or not, but like maybe how their voicemail, even if you get the voicemail, like sometimes you can tell right away, like if it's a bunch of like curse words and like really like crazy music and like that's their voicemail, maybe that doesn't really fit with the position that you're looking to fill, right? Or maybe it does, maybe it does, I don't know. No judgment here either way. But I think one of my favorite things, in addition to all of that we discussed, and I think it was you, Marissa, but I think this sounds so obvious, but sometimes when we're in the recruitment hustle mode, we forget, but consider matching the specific background requirements. And I think this is maybe where it gets a little tricky when you have somebody who's like a fantastic candidate, but maybe not for the position you actually have open. So I think another tip for everybody from kind of what I've taken out of my preparation for this call and everything I've heard these fantastic folks say today is like you have to have a mechanism for that, a mechanism for kind of matching specific backgrounds and kind of knowing what you truly have. Marissa, was it you that made you, is this ringing a bell?
Yes, it does. And everyone, you know, explained it perfectly well, but definitely knowing what your needs are, you know, what you need. A resume is an excellent tool, but also like Tanya said, screening. Let's get the candidate on the phone, ask key questions in regards to what you are needing. I think it's very important. And I highly recommend that, you know, we do that.
Yeah, I love that. All right, question number 5. We made it. When the 4 of us were preparing for this call, one of my favorite quotes that came up was, and I believe it was Eric who said it, when you're a recruiter, you're never not a recruiter. So I'm hoping that each of you can kind of speak a little more to this and how it looks in your individual lives, whatever you're kind of comfortable sharing. Eric, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so as a recruiter, definitely you're never not a recruiter. I've had instances where I'm at Target and I'm walking around and then somebody comes up to me and they're like, hey, what does that mean on your shirt? And then they're a loss prevention person. So then we get in a conversation. Next thing you know, well, not to steal employees from Target, but this person's interested in applying for Black Knight Patrol, or they're looking to develop their career or grow within whatever they're doing. Other times I'll be walking around at a store, or I see somebody who, you know, has that demeanor that you know, walks tall, is confident. So I go up to him and I say like, hey, what do you do? And start a quick conversation. And then we get on going to things. And, you know, there's another applicant, a possible applicant, or family members, anybody that you come across. They all have grandchildren. They all have children. They have brothers, sisters. Everybody has somebody who is looking for a job. So I think no matter where you go, who you speak to, you're never not a recruiter. There's always an opportunity to put the word out there and get somebody new into your recruitment process.
Yeah, I love that. And I know, Anne, this question, I mean, might be a little tweaked for you at this stage in your career, but the concept was when you're a recruiter, you're never not a recruiter. And so I'm asking the panelists to kind of speak to that in their individual lives. But for you, I don't know if you want to speak to that, or if you want to speak more to like how the recruiters on this call can balance that. And I know work-life balance is a whole nother rabbit hole we could go down, with you especially. But either direction you want to take that question, I'll let you take the lead, Anne.
Oh my God, the things that Ashley says about me. No, you know what? I actually think, I mean, you know, as there are business owners here, and we know that, I mean, you're always having to think about how you're presenting in public and interacting with people. You know, you could drive down the road and flip somebody off, but then again, you might run into that person somewhere else. Or if you have a personalized plate like I do, you stopped doing that a long time ago. But no, I really do think you're always a recruiter. And I think that you should always keep that top of mind, and just, you never know where you're going to meet somebody. So, I mean, I can definitely speak to this for sure back in any of my days that I was in-house, especially in the security industry. And I always carried business cards with me. And then we actually made business cards up for all of our supervisors that basically said, we're hiring, and we listed, you know, security officer and who to contact on it. So they could easily give those out. So it doesn't have to be their own personal card. If there's an email or a phone number, however you want them to reach you. And we would encourage them to hand those out anywhere and everywhere. You know, Starbucks, you get great service. I like the Target thing, Eric. But, you know, and I think I shared this with Ashley, when I'm out in the field, I'm always looking at the security officers, how they're presenting themselves. And I always look at the patch to see what company it is, because I'm very curious about who's taking the time to make sure their officers are looking sharp and really being service oriented, especially obviously if I can interact with them, they're public facing. So I think it's a great idea to just, you never know where you're going to meet somebody or meet someone that knows someone. So you can't say it enough to people that you're recruiting.
I love that tangible tip. That is such a great idea. I've never done business cards, but we always make sure our managers have flyers. But the business cards is so much more practical to just kind of carry with them all the time. Yeah, I actually got got kicked out of a mall once for passing out some information to some really fantastic security officers. And their supervisor came over and was like, are you trying to poach my people? You gotta go. And I was like, you're really gonna throw me out right now? And he was like, you have to leave. And I was like, okay, I won't do it again. And he's like, you have to go. He was really upset. This was a long time ago, and the market was not anything like it was right now. So he was very protective. I'm not usually somebody who gets kicked out of places, so that was a first for sure. With that, Marissa, Tanya, what do you have for us? And you both had amazing notes on this, but
I've done the same. I've gotten kicked out due to passing out flyers at the mall.
thank you.
But again, for the 20th time, I am a huge people person. I can start a conversation, you know, when I'm in the checkout line, and these small chats always lead to employment conversations. And hey, let me leave you my business card in case you know someone or you're interested. So definitely, I'm a recruiter 24/7. Everywhere I go, I am thinking as a recruiter, this person can work for me. It's in my day to day.
I love that. I literally wrote down Marissa being a people person dash Marissa. But I think one of the other things, really useful things that you said that kind of helps put this in a perspective for everybody listening today, is that everyone knows someone who needs a job, Right. And just when you put it into that perspective, it really is, you know, everyone knows someone who could be a potential applicant for you, even if they aren't themselves the applicant. So I love that. Tanya, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah. So I think the other thing is like when, you're a recruiter, we're a recruiter for a security company and I recruit for security, but you know, I'm always thinking like a recruiter. I always get messages from LinkedIn from, other individuals thinking I'm, a recruiter for another industry. And they're like, can you help me find a job? So I'm always open to help people, even if it's, not what I'm doing. I did have an example of someone that reached out to me that was in the banking industry, and this is while I was currently working at Garda, and she was looking for employment. And I said, I'm sorry, unfortunately, I recruit for security, but I could keep my eye out. And I did have my eye out for her if I found anything or if I knew someone that had an open position for her. And she was so grateful. Like 3-4 days later, she messaged me and her son's in security. And so she's like, my son is in security and he's looking for a job. And I just thought that that was an amazing example that, how one thing can lead to open doors for your company. Always be open to helping people because you don't know where it's gonna, lead you.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I think it's so true. And I think it just kind of speaks to that whole concept of, right, everybody knows somebody who needs a job. And so when you kind of approach it numbers wise that way, even talk about more numbers in the door. And one of the questions that we didn't get to, but would be a fantastic separate conversation in of itself, is kind of like, how do we consider our current staffing needs, present candidates, and plan for the future recruitment pipeline kind of all simultaneously. And so we're kind of at our capacity, but if you all just have kind of one quick tip that you want to throw out, because it speaks to exactly what Tanya and all of you are kind of, the underlying mechanism for this is because we have to balance those things, like what are our current needs and what do we need in the future. So really quickly, Eric, what do you have for us on that one?
I think that one would go back to the community portion of what we do. And it would also just have in your mind what you're looking for in the future. And then go to those organizations that provide that for you. So whether it's community colleges, high school programs, cadet programs, fire programs, professional development programs, just continuously keep in contact with those individuals, those programs, and then plan to have that bucket of personnel that you're gonna reach out to in the future. I go as far to actually schedule emails for future date at times because I forget things. So I put it in the system, I schedule the email, and then 90 days out, I have a random follow-up from somebody who I want to contact maybe last year or whatever it is. So I think that helps a lot.
That's awesome. That's a great tip. All right, Anne, what do you got for us? Juggling present and future.
So I'm going to tell you something that we used to do in my security company that I don't know that anybody in their right mind has time to do this anymore. And I don't even know how we did it, but we used to put every single applicant into a database. Does anyone still do that with all of their skills that they could do? Okay, good. I'm glad to hear. And then we would be able to search that database and reach out to people. So that someone, maybe we'd passed on them initially for some reason, or we never got to them because we ended up filling our hiring, or we weren't hiring somehow. That doesn't even seem possible. But yeah. And I love what Eric's saying. I really think that community piece, I just think that's so important. Just keeping yourself top of mind and always being out there.
Absolutely. I love that. All right, Marissa, Tanya, I'd love to hear from both of you on this one if you have anything, or maybe Garda World's like company perspective on this balancing act.
I could go. So hold on, I lost my camera. Where is it? So
Oh no.
sorry, having technical difficulties here.
Okay, we can hear you
Give me
now.
one- Okay, great. So what I do is we and I know Marissa does this as well. We will set up weekly meetings with our hiring managers. We also do have a database of what open positions we have to recruit for. I'm sorry, my light turned off. So there we go. Yeah, so every week we'll meet with our hiring managers and kind of see what the needs are. And even though, like I mentioned, we do have a database of where what open positions we have, but it's really important to meet with your hiring managers weekly, if not more than once, and see what the needs are for their sites and, you know, for the company. That's how we pinpoint what our, you know, staffing needs are, immediate and present. Now for future, what, you know, we mentioned is pipeline. It's, you know, once you fill your current positions, you still have candidates that you can talk to. What we do is we block out time every week, and we'll you know, phone screen and interview and actually pipeline those candidates. You know, you could have it on an Excel spreadsheet, or, you know, you could handwrite their names. I mean, however you do it, you know, how you can pipeline, and then you could reach out to those candidates in the future date and offer them positions once open positions come up again.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that is so, you know, kind of to Anne's point, and you're echoing that as well, Tanya, which is so critical. You have to have some mechanism to track that information as the balancing act. And I know some of the smaller security companies here also have like explored the idea of, you know, partnering with security training academies. And so there's some different like long-term pipeline things that you can do there as well. Everything that Eric mentioned, just those different community partnerships, it all really does add up. And the problem is, I think sometimes for recruiters, is you get in that like hamster wheel of I got to fill a position, I got to fill a position, I got to fill a position. And when you don't take the time to kind of step outside of that and do some of the long-term planning, then you're constantly in the hamster wheel, because you're not maybe hiring the best candidates because you're just trying to fill a position. And so it is a delicate balancing act, I feel, for all of you out there that maybe recruitment isn't your full-time gig. I think if you can find a way to balance that, it's really helpful.